everybody and welcome back to English with Dr. Papori Barooah. Now of late I have been talking much about transformation of sentences. We have talked about the declarative, interrogative, sentences like that, and also about compound complex sentences. Now I'd like to talk about something similar but very different also, and that is voice in English. I would like to make it very clear in the beginning itself. I'll be focusing more on how a student can actually deal with the question of transforming the active voice to the passive voice, and not much about the details and intricacies that are involved, which we call grammatical and completely linguistic. So I'd like to focus more on how a person can actually get all the marks if it comes in the exams to transform the active voice to the passive voice or vice versa. So let's start. Now when we talk about active voice, passive voice, what is it all about? We are actually talking about a sentence being given in the examination, and you have to transform it from one form to the other, whether it's from active voice to the passive voice or passive voice to the active voice. Now when we talk about voice in English, it is not about how we talk. It is about what happens to the verb and how it agrees with the subject and how we make the transformations, and still the verb has to agree with the subject and still they retain the meaning. The focus is on the verb, whether what happens is the subject of the action is doing the work or the work is done on the subject. So it is like till now we have known, like we have to always take out the verb in a sentence and ask a WH before the verb to get the subject, and ask a WH after the verb to get the object. So let's get going, and if you want to refer to how we can take out the verbs in the subject and the object in the sentence, we can always refer back to my earlier lessons on transformation of sentences and basically verbs also. So let's get going, and just let me make it very clear and easy for you to get full marks in the exams in active voice and passive voice transformation. Now very commonly all teachers in English, I guess, talk about the cat killed the rat. Whenever we talk about active voice and passive voice. So the cat killed the rat. I may replace it, or I may write it in another manner. The rat was killed by the cat. So what do we have here? We have something called the active voice, because we use the cat killed the rat. So it's very forceful if I tell the cat killed the rat, instead of me telling the rat was killed by the cat. So when I say the cat killed the rat, it is the active voice. And it's very forceful, and it is something very strong and direct and clear in tone. Okay? Or say for instance, monkeys love bananas. So monkeys love bananas. Very clear. So we have love as the verb. Who loves? Monkey loves. Alright? And or what? Monkeys love what? The bananas. So this is like you have very clear subject, object, and we have a verb in between. Now if I have, this is the active voice and is very forceful. Now if I want to have another sentence in the active voice only, say for instance, the kids threw the toys. The kids threw the toys. You can very well clearly see before you there's a person who's acting and there's some object on which it is being acted upon. So the kids and the toys, the kids the subject and the toys the object. In between we have the verb. What is the verb? Threw. Very clear there. That is active voice. Clear, definite, and very forceful. Now in the passive voice, however, what happens is the focus is on the experience and not on who did it. Let's say for instance, my house was built in 2018. My house was built in 2018. So I'm focusing on my house, and it is not important who built it. It is important about, what I'm trying to talk about is my house. That is more important. And when we don't want to mention who made it or who did it, then also we use the passive voice. Now it might seem very confusing to you all. Now let us make it clear with some definite examples. So let us deal with a very definite example which I had already talked about in a few slides earlier. Monkeys love bananas. Now in this particular sentence, we all know love is the verb. Who loves? Monkeys love. Therefore, it's the subject. And monkeys love what? Bananas. That is the object. Now we have directly subject, verb, object. It is what? It's the active voice. Now I need to change the subject and the object, interchange their places, and then we get the passive voice. But be very, very careful. There are a lot of things you need to remember if you have to get it correct. What are they? Let's check out. So what happens is that the number of verbs changes when we change from the active voice to the passive voice or vice versa. Now I am talking about here the active voice. So monkeys love bananas. One verb, love. The moment I make it passive voice, it will have two verbs. If there were two verbs, it would have become three verbs. So it increases, the number of verbs increases when we when we transform from the active voice to the passive voice. But the other way around, from the passive voice to the active voice, the number of verbs decreases. So here obviously we have one verb, it will become two verbs when we talk about trying to make it into the passive voice. One more thing we need to remember is that we have to use a by phrase or a prepositional phrase. Normally we call it a by phrase when we are talking about active voice, passive voice transformation. And if there is a by phrase, you have your antennas up, it is a passive voice. Okay. So next thing is that we have to be very careful not to change the tense in the sentence. Now if I talk about monkeys love bananas, simple present tense. And I have to retain the tense when I transform from the active voice to the passive voice. Now how do you go about? What will it become? It will become, the bananas will come here, monkeys will go back. So bananas, now this is bananas, it's plural. And hence, when we use a be form of the verb, what are the be form of the verb? Is, am, are, was, were, be and being, any of those. And always remember, it is the first verb which will mention the tense or which will show the tense in a sentence if there are more than one verbs. So here this is simple present tense here. I need to retain the tense and hence it is bananas are loved. Now are, because bananas is plural, I have to maintain the subject verb agreement. And hence bananas are loved. Though it might seem ed is a verb, it's past tense. Remember, we are talking about, always remember, if there are two verbs, the first verb will show the tense. Are is present tense. So this sentence is in the present tense. Bananas are loved, and then we use by phrase. What is it? By monkeys. So we have this is the active voice and transform now into the passive voice. Okay. Now let's check out with another one, like the kids threw the toys. It's a past tense. The kids threw the toys. So here what's happening? This is the verb and this is the kids subject. What did the kids throw? The kids threw what? That is the toys. That is the object. Very simple. I bring the toys in front, I bring the kids behind, and there's one verb, and threw is a past tense. I need to use two verbs. The first verb will show the tense. What is the past tense? It is the moment I bring the toys here, toys is plural, necessarily we have were. So the toys were thrown by the kids. So you have to remember, it seems very complicated, but the moment you practice, it becomes much easier. You can always look up for more exercises on this on English for Polytechnics by Dr. Papori Barooah, that's myself. And then I'll leave you the link in the description below because you can also get it at amazon.in. Okay, so here as I have shown you, and here the kids is the object and the word thrown is the verb, the toys become the subject. When this was like the other way around when we were talking about in the active voice. So here what is very obvious is that the object becomes the subject and the subject becomes the object. The tense is the past tense, so I'm maintaining the past tense, and you're using the by phrase. The presence of a by phrase passive voice. And one more thing, we always have to remember that we have to maintain the subject-verb agreement. Okay, now let's go about another one. The kids threw the toy. As is obvious, I just showed it to you. You have to be careful. It is this way around. The kids threw the toy. So kids plural. Here it's threw. And the toy, it's singular. The moment I bring this here and take this back, that is, I make the object the subject and the subject the object. Here, let's remember, the toy is one. So, the toy, it is not were. A subject-verb agreement will be there. So, was thrown by the kids. It's as easy as that. Okay. Now, let's go for the next one. Say, the toy was thrown by the kids. Now, we have to remember if there are two verbs, as I said, always in a verb group, always remember the number of verbs will change accordingly and according to the changing from the active to the passive. That is very important. And the tense. Okay, in the passive voice, so if there's one verb, as I said, just mentioned some time back, there'll be two verbs. If there are two verbs, there'll be three verbs. If there are three verbs, there'll be four verbs. And maximum, you can have four verbs together in a sentence as a group. So that is that far you can go when we are talking about using verbs together in a sentence. Okay, now let us take another example, because the more examples you do, the better it becomes and easier still. So the vase is broken. Now when I say the vase is broken, so there are many things there. I do not know who broke it might be, or I do not want to tell who broke it because I'm scared about it. So, or might be I'm not giving much importance to who broke it, but more importance to my expensive vase being broken. And hence, whenever we talk about the passive voice, actually what happens, the focus is not on the doer, but actually what has happened. So here, the vase is broken. One more thing we need to remember is that when we're talking about formal text, we also use passive voice. In narratives and report writings, we use passive voice there. And it also, of course, makes the writing clearer. Okay. Now, some more examples of the passive voice. Say, for instance, yesterday, the front door had been left open. Yesterday, the front door had been left open. So what's more important is the action that it had been left open, no matter who left it open. So the focus is on the event or the experience or what happened, and not on who left it open. Or say, for instance, all my jewelry has been stolen. It's obvious the thief must have stolen my jewelry. But for me, what is more important is my jewelry has been stolen. So therefore, the focus is the activity of stealing the whole thing, of stealing the thing, but we are not really concerned about who actually stole it, but the thing that it has been stolen. Or say the room has been cleaned. For any lady in the house, it's very important to have the feeling, all right, the room has been cleaned. So it's like, okay, somebody must have cleaned it. It's not important who cleaned, but it's very important it's cleaned and neat and tidy. So the focus is on the action and not the doer of the action. Okay, now let us let me just show you how it goes about. As I said, so we just have to do this inversion there. And so one verb will become two verb. And when my mother cooks delicious meals, because it's third person singular, hence it's cooks. Okay, and of course, if I transform it into the passive voice, it becomes delicious meals. Meals, plural, are cooked by my mother. Okay, that is the way you go about. So subject is plural, and so we have a plural verb. And it's a by phrase there. Automatically, it's a passive voice. And therefore, one verb becomes two. If you remember, let's go back. Here, my mother cooks delicious meals here. So here it's one verb, and this verb will become two verbs. They are cooked. So that's the passive voice. Okay, let's see some more transformations so that things become clearer. Like say, my mother is cooking delicious meals. So we know two verbs are there. Now, can I put my mother is cooking delicious meal by herself? No, I don't need it. I cannot put it. It doesn't make proper sense there. So this is already active voice. When you cannot add a by phrase, it's an active voice. Now, if I have to make it passive, the two verbs will become three. Delicious meals are, because meals is plural, are being cooked. Now, as a kid, when I did not know much of grammar, might be how is it that I got things clear into my head? Very simply, what I would do is that, say, is cooking, though we have this ing form there, so automatically, if that is there, if you have to transform from the active to the passive, it will become the ing form of the be verb being. So, delicious meals are being cooked by my mother. Now let's go for my mother cooked delicious meals. That's a past tense there. So what will it become? The delicious meals were cooked. The were is the verb past tense. So as I said, the first verb will always tell the tense. Again, say for instance, my mother was cooking delicious meals. If I ask you, how do you go about the was cooking? Was the past tense, cooking, the ing is there. So if I bring delicious meals this side, delicious meals already plural. Right? So the verb will be were being cooked by my mother. So that is it. Okay? Or say my mother had cooked. Already it's in the past tense. Perfective tense, had cooked delicious meals. So I will tell, this is no ing here. I'm talking about very, very practically, or the way you can always associate things in your head when you try to understand it. This is what I try to, like cooked, this is not cooking, right? So here we do not have ing form in the next form. So I have delicious meals had been, B-E-E-N, cooked by my mother. Okay. So again, my mother will have cooked delicious meals will become delicious. So will have cooked. Already three verbs are there. It will become four verbs. Will have been cooked. This ed is there. No ing here. It's been. Or say, my mother would have cooked delicious meals. Already three are here. Would have been cooked by my mother. So this is the way we go about. And so when we're forming passives, however, we also need to remember that there might be two objects in a sentence. And then how do you go about? So the two forms which are correct. What are they? Say, so we have here my mother, cooked is the verb, subject, object number one, a delicious meal, and object number two for me, that is me. So how do I go about? I might make subject, object number one, or subject, object number two. I'll show you both, and both are correct. So when we have a sentence with two objects like this, my mother cooked a delicious meal for me. Cooked what? A delicious meal for whom? For me. So there are two objects. Now we can change it and I'll show you how. It's very easy there. A delicious meal was cooked for me by my mother. So I have taken a delicious meal in front and I have two verbs there, and this is how we get it when we use the first object. And the second object also you can make the subject, like I was cooked a delicious meal by my mother. So like that we can do the conversions in the active passive voice. Now the basic question that emerges is that how do we decide what verbs, what voice to use when we are using a sentence? So it is like what you want to emphasize upon will give you the idea about what voice you should use in a sentence, and both the voices are equally important and equally legible, and you can comprehend them better. So both the voices can be used depending on your choice. So I hope you had a nice time and you understood very clearly what is active voice and passive voice in English, and how you can actually get all your marks correctly here when you're talking about active passive voice in the examination. So I hope you'll give it a like and a thumbs up, and you'll of course subscribe to my channel for more videos on English grammar, written English, phonetics. Thank you.